and I'm just so damn glad that you all chose to be here tonight. Welcome to That's What She Said. So there's a few things we're going to talk about before we get started. How many of you are frequent flyers? How many of you were here last year? Yes, we love a repeat crowd, so you know the drill. So all of you rookies, welcome. Tonight is about the ladies. We are going to hear incredible stories from 10 very brave women who have been working for months on the very best story to tell, to share with you. A year and 6 days ago, we were right in this very spot doing this very thing. Some of you in the room, let me hear a little whoop whoop if we were on the stage. Yes. 10 ladies took the stage last year and set the bar high. But 10 years ago, this whole concept got started because 3 women were sitting in their backyards and wanted to make a difference for their girls. And so She Said was born by this lady right here. Stand on up, Carrie Rosso. So 10 years ago, Carrie Rosso dreamed up this whole thing, and they, we've got a barn, we've got some hay, let's have a show. And 10 years later, here we are in cities across, and there's a national director, Jeanette, there's Kevin, I'm sure is here somewhere, who are making these events happen literally all over the country. More to come this year. There's a book, there's a podcast, there's this, there's that. So you are among friends and doing good things. But here's the crazy thing, my story with Carrie began more than 30 years ago when we were, freshmen in college and senior in high school and met on a college tour, and I fell in love and thought, this woman has got to be a part of my life. And 30 years later, we are still connected. So it makes a difference. Please. Things for tonight. I really encourage you, it's kind of crazy out in the world right now, right? We talked about this a year ago as well. There's just stuff happening. And what I would really encourage each of you to do is to be where your feet are. So turn your phones off. There's video, there's cameras, there's all the things happening. So your loved ones are going to be captured appropriately. You don't need to have your phone out, but you do need to have your heart on. So if you can put your phone away, be where you are, and engage with these women, it will make all the difference. As I said, there has never been a better time for women, but we have so much more to do. So thank you for being here, supporting the women that you love, supporting the women that you maybe have never met. And without really any further ado, I want you to give them all that you've got, and please welcome the cast of 2023, That's What She Said, St. Louis.
My name is Danyelle Little. I'm 47 years old, a creative soul, and a reformed people pleaser. There's some people pleasers in that audience, I see. But my most important role is that of a mother of 2, 28-year-old Cody and 19-year-old Leigh. They are the best things that have happened to me. I was pregnant with my son at 17 years old, and I gave birth to him when I was 18. To say it was a difficult time doesn't even begin to describe it. But recently, through therapy and much needed introspection and inner work, I finally forgave myself. my grandmother, whose dreams for me did not include being a teen mom, I held on to that guilt for years and years and years. And then I exhaled. I not only forgave myself, but I forgave my family for not allowing me to feel, for allowing me to feel unloved, uncared for, and unworthy. Now I am able to tell my story my way. I hit a peak of my healing when I sat down and wrote my 18-year-old self a letter. I wish she had it when she needed it. Dear 18-year-old Danyelle, it's almost time for the baby to come. You're just about as prepared as you're ever going to be. The crib is put together. The stroller is in its box, waiting for the delivery. The baby clothes that you have put in the layaway at Kmart are finally paid for and in the drawer. Gotta love layaway. You have everything you need. Well, almost everything. I'm so sorry you don't have the support that you need. Yes, your mother is allowing you to live with her after you and Tony split up, but she's not very happy about it. I know this bothers you. Your dad is 5 hours away, and he's been helping you financially, but it's just not the same. He's a little upset with you too. Everybody is. See, you were the golden child, the one that was supposed to go far. How many times did people, family, friends, even strangers remark that you are a star? The next Oprah, they call you. You were supposed to graduate high school and go off to college, and then start working as a journalist for the news. You have the it factor. That's what they say. But instead of graduating high school and going off to college, you graduated high school and jumped into motherhood at only 18 years old. Mom barely talks to you. Grandma's letters sent to you look like they are tear-stained. Your friends have moved on and forgotten about you. You're pretty much all alone. But let me tell you, honey, you are not alone. You are going to give birth to a beautiful 9-pound baby boy who giggles and coos and looks at you upon hearing your voice for the first time outside of the womb. He is the definition of true love. He doesn't care that you're 18 or that you're a single mom. He smiles often and is advanced for his age. He begins walking at 7 months, talking at 9. When you enroll in college, when he's a little under 1 year old, he jumps when you walk into the daycare to pick him up. He lights up. He is joy. He doesn't care that when he's 3 or 4 years old, you make the same thing for dinner every few days because there isn't a lot of money to go around. He loves his bedroom filled with toys and a bed and little toddler furniture. So cute. You sleep on the couch because all you can afford is a 1-bedroom. And it's important for you that he have the bedroom so he could play and have his own space. And over time, you get a 2-bedroom, but you find yourself getting further and further behind. Tony doesn't help, and his family doesn't do much financially either. You find yourself drowning, and a lifeline comes from where you least expect it. Your grandmother. She says, "Come to St. Louis. I will help you." Because she knows that despite her disappointment, you are going to be in huge trouble if you can't make a new start. You pack your bags, and you reluctantly leave your son in Florida with his dad, and you go to St. Louis. You begin working corporate jobs, making more money, you save. You start dating a young man who, 4 years later, you marry. Your son is reunited with you after a year and a half, and he's once again with you full time. You graduate college with an associate degree. Danyelle, this will be your life. You get married. You have another child. This time it's a girl. You're pregnant exactly 10 years after you were pregnant with your son. Your daughter is born, and Cody is a good big brother, but he doesn't exactly like sharing the spotlight. You do your best to show him that he is still your favorite son. Corporate continues to move you up the ladder, and you go back to school for your BA. Move to the burbs because the schools are better. Things are far from perfect, but as they say, you've come a long way, baby. Start a blog? Yeah, why not? And in August 2009, you buy your domain and start giving HR tips because that's been your profession. The do's and don'ts of interviews, job etiquette, etc. You begin to monetize by running ads, and brands begin to reach out to you, to pay you to talk about them. Then you decide to make it a lifestyle blog for working moms, and boom, you are not the next Oprah. You are the next Danyelle. You begin the various TV appearances and trips to speak in destinations you never thought of. Brands are sending you free smartphones to try alongside laptops, gadgets, and other cool things. And your son gets the perks, and your daughter does too. Toyota, Kia, Verizon, AT&T, Hilton, Marriott, and St. Louis's own Build-A-Bear. The list goes on and on and on. They pay you because you have 100,000 readers each month and almost 80,000 total followers across your networks. Danyelle, you'll be on CNN.com and Huffington Post and just about every local show there is to name. People will walk up to you to the grocery store and ask, are you that girl that I saw on Show Me St. Louis last night or yesterday? Yes, this happens. Your son will move to Hollywood to live his dream of being an artist, and your daughter will graduate from high school magna cum laude with other various ropes around her neck at graduation. She will be accepted to several prominent colleges and will decide on St. John's University in New York City. You took her there when she was 10, and she told you then that she was going to move there someday. Your son, when he was 6, said that he was going to move to Hollywood when he got bigger. They both said it, and it happened. Because you dreamed, they dreamed. Girl, you've overcome just about every obstacle that has come your way. So while you may think now that your life is over, you are just getting started. Don't give up. Your mom is proud of you now. And can't meet anyone without bragging about you and her grandchildren. Go figure. Your dad died in 2012, but he was proud of you too. He never stopped rooting for you. You aren't going to please everyone, but you were pleased. And baby girl, that will be enough. Love your 47-year-old self.
Bardot. On Facebook, I describe myself as a boy mom, a goal achiever, a woman with a growth mindset, a person who is a connector and has a big heart and is bold. So now that you know me, I'm gonna go ahead and sit down. So below the surface, I'm actually a woman that's been struggling with feeling like she was enough since the age of 9. I hid a piece of myself for over 36 years until I decided in 2021 to publish my story in Owning Your Grid. There was no running from the truth now. It was filed with the Library of Congress. I kept this part of me hidden because it made me feel like I wasn't enough, like I didn't fit in, that no one could understand my struggles, and that I would never achieve success. Why? Because I was flawed. This brought about feelings of fear, self-doubt, poor self-esteem. But later, I would discover that those would be the motivations that would give my fuel and purpose for what I'm all about today. I'm an inclusive community builder because I felt like I never fit in, so I built great community. I show up for others during their darkest times because that's what I needed during my deepest, darkest depression. I'm an overachiever who's obsessed with professional development and credentials to feel like I was enough. But while taking a leadership class through Focusing Lewis Women in Leadership, I quickly realized that was just my shield. That was my armor if you're a Brene Brown fan. What I really needed to do was heal. So, a part of my healing journey is sharing my story. Every time I share my story, more of me heals. And this is a lesson that I've learned. So, the truth is that I have a disability, and yes, it's unseen. When I was growing up and I would share that I had a disability, it was presumed that I was stupid, and I was judged, and there was assumptions made, and I was robbed of opportunities. And it made me work even a little bit harder. So for example, I was told that I was never going to graduate from high school. I had a graduate assistantship pulled because I had poor spelling in my handwritten case notes. And I was told that I needed to find a new profession while enrolled in my master's program because I had poor spelling and grammar. I was also told that I couldn't take a foreign language because they didn't think I had the mental capacity. But I took 4 years of German in high school. So let's just say I despise educators because they didn't show me respect, so I didn't respect them. This trauma was a lot of fear around my disability, so I chose not to share what happened, and I chose to hide it. If I didn't talk about it, it didn't exist, even though the struggles were very much real. As a friend of mine described, a neurodivergent brain is like always taking the scenic route, or a non-divergent brain is like always being on the highway. So it takes me a little bit longer, but I'm a natural problem solver. At 9 years old is when I started to feel as though I was flawed, because I wasn't like other 9-year-olds. So I ask you today, what was it like for you in the 3rd grade and when you were 9 years old? Were you playing on a playground? Were you laughing, hopscotch with friends? Were you enjoying just life in general? Well, that was not my 3rd grade year. I called that year my Great Awakening. Because in the 3rd grade is when I had an imaginary sticker plastered on my face telling everybody that I wasn't enough because I was diagnosed with a disability that I didn't ask for, didn't want, and wasn't prepared to deal with for the rest of my life. My disability made me feel so insecure. As an adult, reading back to my case notes from 1993, it states, Jennifer presents well, but she won't tell her friends or her teacher that she has a disability, even though deep down I knew my teachers knew. If you have ever seen the show Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, I felt like I was a misfit toy on Misfit Island. I didn't want to be treated any differently. I denied all accommodations, extra test time, anything. I felt shame. A little bit longer, but I'm a natural problem solver. At 9 years old is when I started to feel as though I was flawed, because I wasn't like other 9-year-olds. So I ask you today, what was it like for you in the 3rd grade and when you were 9 years old? Were you playing on a playground? Were you laughing, hopscotch with friends? Were you enjoying just life in general? Well, that was not my 3rd grade year. I called that year my Great Awakening. Because in the 3rd grade is when I had an imaginary sticker plastered on my face telling everybody that I wasn't enough because I was diagnosed with a disability that I didn't ask for, didn't want, and wasn't prepared to deal with for the rest of my life. My disability made me feel so insecure. As an adult, reading back to my case notes from 1993, it states, Jennifer presents well, but she won't tell her friends or her teacher that she has a disability, even though deep down I knew my teachers knew. So If you have ever seen the show Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, I felt like I was a misfit toy on Misfit Island. I didn't want to be treated any differently. I denied all accommodations, extra test time, anything. I felt shameful that I had this disability that made me different because it brought feelings of hopelessness. At 9 years old, I was so ashamed that this gift would teach me to be fearless, to be resilient, to develop a thick skin and understand how to embrace challenges. For 27 years, I would hide this feeling of feeling like a liability. I would choose to not acknowledge my disability. If it didn't exist and I didn't talk about it, it wasn't real. At 9 years old, I lost my great-grandma, my grandfather. I had my first realization that life can end at any age, as I nearly died at Six Flags as I fell onto the bridge that tours the theme park with a 50-foot drop-off below. Yeah. This was a story that wasn't talked about in my family because it brought my parents nightmares seeing their oldest daughter nearly die. Maybe this is where I got that notion, if I don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. This was the same year that I'd be seen as an object. A nine-year-old boy in my third grade classroom told me that he could see through my clothes. See through my clothes? How could a 9-year-old have X-ray vision? How could he make me feel so powerless? But what finally shattered me and brought me to my knees is when I was diagnosed with a learning disability. I mean, sure, I couldn't read, and I wasn't comprehending very much, and I was falling behind in school, but a learning disability? Why were all of these struggles happening to me? A heavy year for a 9-year-old. I often look back to that young girl and wish I could give her a hug and remind her that everything's going to be okay. And listen to your favorite song, Don't Worry, Be Happy. A friend of mine inspired me to put a name to my arch nemesis as she had done for hers on her healing journey. So let me tell you about Mean Miss Frizzle, my resource teacher. Mean Miss Frizzle. So she had big curly hair, like the nice Miss Frizzle from Magic School Bus. But this woman was not nice at all. She was cruel, unempathetic, and just plain rude. I don't even know if she had a passion for teaching. Mean Miss Frizzle told my mom that I was never going to graduate from high school and I was going to be dependent upon government disability. How dare Mean Miss Frizzle play fortune teller with my life? That woman's judgment would essentially be the fuel and the motivation to prove her wrong. Mean Miss Frizzle was not a good fortune teller at all. In fact, she didn't know who I was below the surface. Turns out I'm really stubborn, and I have parents with a really strong backbone. Not to say that obstacles didn't derail me along my journey, because there were lots, but I always chose to push ahead. Mean Miss Frizzle was a lousy fortune teller, but I understand why these assumptions were made. Generally, by the third grade, if you're unable to read, you're more likely to end up incarcerated or on government disability. So it makes sense. But this girl wasn't one of those statistics. I encourage you to never allow anyone to play fortune teller with your life, because only you know who you are below the surface. My parents never listened to me, Miss Frizzle, either. My parents would say, Jen, going to college is not an option. You're going. Did you give it your all? Then that's all that matters. They would take me to private tutoring, and they would challenge my capabilities. They would have my IQ tested to prove that I was not dumb. I was actually above average IQ. My mom put herself through a night class and was a top performer in the car industry and a male-dominated F&I producer. She's a legend. And my dad is a hardworking bricklayer, and he worked all temperatures and weather conditions. They taught me how to have grit. So, let's just say I wasn't an easy child, okay? I was constantly testing the boundaries and pushing the limits, but all I wanted to do was to prove my parents, make them proud, and show them I was capable of going to college. So I did prove Miss Frizzle wrong, and I went on to graduate high school. And even though I was denied all the colleges I applied for during my undergraduate, I pushed through that rejection and started at Merrimack, and then transferred into Fontbonne, and then made history in my family, graduating with a bachelor's degree on both sides of my family. I went on to get 2 master's degrees and actually graduated a semester early on Dean's List with only $15,000 worth of student debt. I learned to push through my self-doubt and my challenges. creep in, I would test it to see if it was valid. Do I have proof that what I'm telling myself is real? After speaking my truth, it allowed me to begin to heal. And by owning that I have a learning disability, I actually discovered I had dyslexia. So no wonder I couldn't read. So at 38, I'm just now realizing that I have dyslexia. So this awareness has brought so much clarity into my life and made everything make sense. If I hadn't found the courage to share this piece of me that I was so shameful about, I would never have the relief that I have now knowing that I have dyslexia. 20% of the population actually has dyslexia, and I fit all the criteria. For reading, for grammar, for spelling, for reading out loud. Generally, I have an above average IQ. It all made sense now. Reading out loud has always brought me tremendous embarrassment, and even as I stand before you today, these notes are not a resource. I struggle. I have it all highlighted in bold. But it's like a blind person not having Braille to kind of put things into perspective. But what I've learned to do is memorize and ad-lib. So data supports, I have dyslexia. Now technology has made it easier, I will say that, with spell check and antidote, but my struggles are still very much real. For instance, when I was giving sentimental praise to a friend on LinkedIn, I accidentally used the word detrimental instead of instrumental. And she asked me to take the post down, and I said, I don't see any red squiggly lines, I spelled it all right. So, that's real life. So, I share that story because it's funny, but unseen disabilities show up in different ways, so please always provide others grace. So, I might have been the underdog, according to me and Miss Frizzle, but that educator didn't know who I was below the surface and didn't realize that I had a supportive family. So my hope by sharing this story is you never allow anybody to play fortune teller with your life, because only you know who you are below the surface. Don't allow those negative thoughts to creep in unless you have valid evidence that they're true. And provide others grace, because we don't know what's unseen. So, like I said at the beginning, on Facebook, I describe myself as a boy mom, a goal achiever, a person with a growth mindset, a connector, and a person with a big heart who is bold. So I hope none of you decide to be like me, Miss Frizzle, and decide not to judge people by the surface, but to go a little bit below. So I ask you tonight, who are you below the surface and where are you wanting to heal?
22. These might seem like random numbers to you with no real significance, or maybe great numbers to play for Powerball. Instead, these numbers represent the hour and day that my father died, and will be seared in my brain forever. I realized early after my father's death that numbers would play a significant role in my grief. It's sort of surprising because I'm more of a visual person and numbers really aren't my thing. I've never really paid much attention to them, but now they seem to be everywhere. They serve both as a calming and grounding force for me and a reminder of my great loss. From this point forward, I knew my grief was about the numbers. It started early that morning when my brother kept calling at 4 in the morning. His first few calls didn't wake me. And it's strange because I'm not a great sleeper, lifelong insomnia, but this early morning, I just did not hear his call. He told me to come now, and I wasn't even sure why it was so urgent to come, because in my mind, I had spoken to my father the night before. He said he was fine and that most likely he'd be discharged. But my brother stressed that he had suffered a cardiac arrest and must come now. So I went to be with him and my mother to sit in the waiting room. My aunt and uncle came later to wait as well. We waited for at least 3 hours in total silence. When the family was finally summoned back to the ICU, after what seemed like an eternity for waiting for news, we were greeted with monitors and screens and with all kinds of numbers. What did they all mean? Does this mean his blood pressure is rising, lowering? 60/20 seems extremely low. Well, we all looked at each other and the numbers and the monitors, waiting, wishing for a miracle, until the moment finally arrived, when the doctor stood by his bed, looked up at the monitors, and called the time of death, 11:45. It's nothing like the movies when the doctor calls the time of death, with such authority and drama. It was more like a quiet whimper that I could hardly hear. Again, I realized 60/20. My grief is about the numbers. What followed was the reality that he wasn't coming home with us. So my brother and I began making the first calls to family and friends that he was gone. After about 3 calls, only 30 minutes had passed. Why was time going so slowly? Every minute that passed was excruciating. I started counting the minutes in the first hour and the second. Tick-tock. With each hour, I kept asking myself, how could I live in a world that didn't have my father alive in it? So I fell deeper in knowing that 30 minutes. My grief is about the numbers. When I finally got to the end of the day, after doing mostly mundane things, like filling up my car with gas, calling work to say that I wouldn't be coming in, and greeting all the family and friends that came to my parents' home to offer support, I remember trying to lie down for some well-needed rest and began looking at my parents' outrageously huge digital clock. I mean, just huge, just blinding, so bright. I mean, but that's for another time. As it got closer and closer to midnight, I looked up at 11:50, then a few minutes later at 11:56, then 11:58, 11:59. I remember just praying that it wouldn't turn over to midnight. The numbers just taunted me, tick-tock, tick-tock. There it was, boom, 12 a.m. It was now May 9th. May 9th meant it was a day that didn't have my father alive in it. 12 a.m. My grief is about the numbers. When I finally got up later that morning, I woke up to clear skies and the news reporter reporting it would be sunny with a high of 79 degrees. I couldn't believe the world hadn't stopped. My father died. How dare people go to work, go shopping, or do whatever they do on the Monday after Mother's Day. 79 degrees. My grief is about the numbers. I also wrote the obligatory notice of remembrance on Facebook using the Bible verse, Matthew 25:23. The master said, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling the small amount, so now I give you many more responsibilities. Let us celebrate together." My father was an exemplar of servant leadership. His life was built on doing for others. We joke that he should have gotten sainthood because there wasn't a time that he wasn't trying to help someone, fix something, or connect to people. Matthew 25:23. My grief is about the numbers. In the days that followed, I kept thinking it wasn't real. How could we have just seen him at my cousin's funeral that Monday, May 2nd? And he'd be dead by Sunday, May 8th. The family had already gone to 3 family funerals since that February. He would be our 4th, and we had one more in June of one of his favorite cousins. The same one he had spent the last 3 years taking back and forth to her dialysis appointments faithfully. 5 funerals in the span of 5 months. Even saying it out loud, it doesn't make sense. I know many say God doesn't give you more than you can handle, but I could take a lot less. 5 funerals. My grief is about the numbers. As I struggle to get through the next 10 days until his funeral, I wonder now how I made it through the day. I try to find milestones in the numbers to ground me. 11:45 was one of them. When 11:45 came each morning, I found myself doing a short moment of silence as my own private remembrance. It was magical knowing that my eye would always catch the clock just as it struck 11:45. 11:45. My grief is about the numbers. As I got to the first month on June 8th, which was a feat, I learned to put on a mask to get through the day, always ready for the occasional person that didn't know that my father had died, and then I'd have to explain. Then for the months that followed, 8 was always on my radar. I found myself acknowledging him in either a photo, a message on Facebook, Instagram, attaching one of his favorite songs, Chard's Angel by My Side. 8. My grief is about the numbers. Today, as I sit with the reality that he's been gone for 10 months, 306 days, 8 hours, 45 minutes, or about 7,352 hours, 441,165 minutes, or 26,469,900 seconds. I am both amazed that on some days I've started to live with this tremendous loss, and on other days I am totally immobilized to think that so much time has passed and that he's still gone. It's a strange reality to toggle back and forth. Though my grief has been about the numbers, there's only one number that I think about the most. 1. Only once since his death has someone asked me to tell them a story about him. Only one time I completely lost it in a Starbucks parking lot, when the pain of the loss was so great that it physically hurt. And the wish that I had but only one more day to ask about his life, his wishes, his hopes, and what he would want me to know about living a well-lived life. All I know is that grief is many things, but for me, grief is about the numbers.
Of Dominican descent. As a young teen, I was told that I have an old soul. Maturity received this recognition, and it became my reality at a young age. I realized that a lifetime of trauma gifted my entire family humbling lessons that ultimately sculpted me into the resilient and bright light that I am described to be. However, recently, I began to see me and began to see overall more and more who I really am and who I really come from. I went from being an altar server and church-living Catholic kid in Miami to culture shocked and confused as a student at Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, to a brief life in Chicago, followed by Iowa. What? Then now to St. Louis. Apparently anything that was not home was great to me. As a young adult, I found myself seeking a life that did not put me in a box and allowed me to break away from pieces of my family I swore I wanted no part of. With the deep desire to do more, I poured my focus into being anything but what I knew, from home at least. My secret art skills led me to study graphic design. It was so impressive to me to learn how to communicate without speaking. While in school, I lost myself in music as a piccolo player for the incomparable FAMU's Marching 100 band. Yes, it's very memorable. If you know, you know. And we performed for President Obama twice. We were live on ESPN, and we performed with Prince at Super Bowl 41. I was the first to graduate from a university and work in her chosen field. I got a gig with a corporate company with all the benefits and got to where I was busting my ass to be, away from home and making it on my own. To my beautiful Dominican immigrant parents, I was a success story. Yet being busy was my default excuse to keep me from facing the truth of me not knowing myself. I didn't know who I wanted to be, and I began to quietly resent my life. This all started catching up with my old soul. I began to feel this weight of blame and eventually anger. And then I actually had the absolute audacity to shift responsibility of my own lack of understanding myself to a pair of hardworking, resilient, old school Dominicans, blaming them for my misfortunes with love and awkward friendships. My newfound courage to share these feelings with my parents eventually prompted my dad to say, lovingly might I add, what I eat does not make you shit. That moment gave me a new level of clarity. I mean, at that point, but at that point, I thought my parents and I were old friends, like 21 plus years in the game, but I realized I didn't know them at all. I never understood the humble beginnings they came from until I asked my parents, who were you before we happened to you? Who was Andrea before motherhood transformed her life, where she found herself to be a submissive, loving, kind, really hardworking warrior, yet selfless being? Who was Domingo, the boy kidnapped by his own father in the 50s, simply to torment his mother as she worked hard to love and care for him and his sister? He took them across the country to live in a reality of poverty, abuse, and not being loved. Mommy is a beautiful, timid soul who is the definition of selfless and loving and submissive to a fault. And as much as I wished to not be like her, as a teenager, I'm literally a reflection of this beautiful 4'11" woman, okay? Coming from a large family in La Vega, República Dominicana, where her mother humbly survived, begging in front of churches to provide for her family, despite being sick herself. Mommy didn't see what I saw. She called her naive, innocent, and beautiful spirit stupid, a failure for not pursuing more for herself. Mind you, because of her, our family remained together. Her patience and compassion was, and is, a lesson that made me the woman I am. Because of her, we still are here. She slaved in the glorious 5-star South Beach hotels, housekeeping, for our family. Because of her, my father isn't dead to the drugs that plagued our lives then. It's absolutely mind-blowing to me how we fight our own light, not seeing all the magic in ourselves. Papi, the charismatic Dominicano, a chef, a construction worker, a gardener, a provider, a brilliant comedian, forever dismissed as a drug addict and tarnished with the views that come with that, all while also being judged by his blackness. He has survived so much, yet his vulnerability, his pain, his trauma are overlooked. Forgiving him for his choices as a person lost in drugs, the stealing, the lying, the disappearing, the physically present but not mentally present, the strict father that once was to the man that stood before us. It was really difficult to navigate as a child, but mommy always told us, forgive. Our relationship lost to a gap of time when I needed him most. He is now a senior twin. It's never too late to find yourself. Humble beginnings brought my parents together. Courtship in its truest form. Transparency, family, love, marriage. Led them to this America to build and empower their budding family, leaving behind their entire reality. Asking, who are you? Helped me understand this pair I now proudly call my parents, and brought me to a place where I smile despite all that we survived. Seek joy and positivity in all things. We dance and laugh and sing, no matter what material things we lose. We dare to always be grateful, sweet, honest humans that shine unapologetically. I am Valeria, the baby of the 3 little lives Mommy and Papi brought into this world. I am part of the legacy of 2 Dominican teenagers who dared to dream, dared to love, fight, forgive, and stick together to live a life true to their values. I stand before you, sharing who I am because of Isaiah and the Little Leagues. I am a proud Dominican American. I am a multi-disciplinary artist, a designer, a friend, a partner, and an old soul. Living this life to intentionally pour into you with genuine love, kindness, and light to empower you to live your wildest dreams.
I've gone walking there just about every day. My cell phone is full of pictures of egrets and turtles and trees turning colors and park benches. As I get older, I have just really come to enjoy park benches. The ones that have kind of a curve to support your path. Have a center bar. And a beautiful view. And I've especially really come to appreciate those little plaques that people put on the benches in memory of loved ones that have passed. So one day last summer, I was walking around the grand basement where all of our fountains are, and I saw a bench that had a little plaque on it, so I went over to see it. And this plaque didn't look like all the ones that I usually see, the ones that have a list of roles: beloved wife, mother, friend. Now this plaque had an assignment. And that assignment said, for conversations with Nana. Well, I had a Nana once, and now I am one. Anybody here a Nana? To me, this bench was an opportunity, an invitation to communicate with my Nana, long gone, and to think about my new role as Nana to 2 little boys. Plus, I'm a teacher. I'm all about assignments, so I sat down. I started with the easy stuff. Hey, Nana, do you remember when I was little, that one time I slept over your house? And just before I fell asleep, you said to me, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. Nana, why I always left their house. I have to apologize. I remember this time when you made these really cheesy potatoes, and I wouldn't even try them. Well, to be fair, I know now that you said they were au gratin. I thought you said au gratin. I'm sure they were delicious. And yeah, do you know, we can take our telephones now with us everywhere we go. They're short in your pocket. And not only that, but they give you directions. You never have to be lost again. So after a few of these kind of tidbits that came to my mind, I started connecting the dots between generations in a way that I really hadn't before. 100 years before our COVID pandemic, there was another pandemic. And in that one, influenza killed 50 million people, including a young mother with 5 small children. And one of those children was 18-month-old Genevieve, who would one day grow up to be my nana. Now, Genevieve's father couldn't handle 5 children all by himself, so he decided to give little Genevieve to his sister-in-law to raise. Now, at that time, nobody talked about adoption. So little Genevieve was just quietly brought to another house in another state, given a new last name, introduced to a new couple and told they were mom and dad, introduced to her biological cousins as siblings. I never asked you this when you were alive, but what was it like to find out as an adult that you were not who you thought you were? 100 years later, my daughter and her partner adopted a little boy. Only this adoption was totally different. It was not just acknowledged, but celebrated. This little boy, unlike my nana, this little boy will always know his origin story. So another conversation that I had with Nana, she wouldn't remember. We talked about her diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease and how aware she was at that time that she was losing her memory, but how powerless she was to stop it. This little girl who had lost her identity and had it torn and stitched back together so young, now faced losing it entirely. Now, I know we lost almost everything. But I gotta tell you now, I went to visit you in the nursing home shortly before you died. You had no idea who I was. But you still offered to sing for me. And you remembered every word to every old song. I can still remember you singing with so much gusto. Oh, it ain't gonna rain no more, no more. It ain't gonna rain no more. How can I wash my neck if it ain't gonna rain no more? We spent a lot of time together. But you'd be wrong. As I sat on the bench, suddenly I was overwhelmed with anger. Where were you when I needed you? Did you know my mother was on drugs? Where were you all those times I had to take care of my younger siblings because mom had passed out again? The little girl inside of my adult body was screaming silently for answers she never had. On the other hand, I never walked around the corner to Nan's house to tell her what was going on, to beg for help. It just never occurred to me. And then I had my own children, 3 wonderful children. And I learned the hard way that even the most loving, caregiver, even the most attentive parent, sometimes screws up. And sometimes misses important clues. I did. And sometimes lives with the regret of knowing she did not always keep her children safe. And lives with the regret of knowing that unwittingly she introduced just harm into her family. Yeah. I bet you did the best you could. Maybe I need to cut you some slack. I struggle to do the same for myself. My children eventually grew up, and they found their own partners. And they started to think about having their own children. And they asked me what I would like for my grandmother name to be. In honor of Genevieve. And partly because of that big old sheepdog in Peter Pan who tried to keep the darling children safe. I tried to choose Nana. Incredible ride this Nana gig is. There is nothing like setting out a picnic blanket and a whole picnic at the Metrolink station. I was going to say Forest Park. Well, you have to cheer on the trains as they go by. And there's nothing like spending every Saturday morning at the community college where I teach, going up and down every single elevator to every single floor and letting them push all the buttons. I want my lab to be that park bench, that safe space for these grandchildren. I want to be the Nana that I needed as a child. Someday, maybe there will be a bench somewhere in my memory. It better not have been Center Bar.
In your hand is this beautiful playbill. I believe the person who made this happen is in the room, and she has my gratitude forever. In this playbill, I want you to understand are the businesses in our community that support women. So they said yes to supporting this endeavor, and they said yes to making this possible, and I hope that you will say yes to them. So if you need a financial planner, if you need help staging your room, if you need gasoline, if you need any of those things, these are the people that said yes to tonight, and I want to thank publicly I mentioned gasoline. Rachel is here with On the Run, brought to you by right back here. If you need a slushie, if you need pizza, you need to go to On the Run. My friend Emily, there's Emily. Emily's always a top of the run gal. Emily and her team put this whole beautiful Stage to Move is a staging company. So they help you sell your house, but they also will help you redo your room. And then my friend Stacy at Cannonball helped make sure all of you knew that this was happening. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Things like this do not happen without people saying yes to helping us. Part of the proceeds, part of what those sponsors are helping us do, and what you are helping us do, is make a gift to Run for Women. So Run for Women is a great nonprofit organization here in St. Louis doing really wonderful things for women and helping them climb the economic ladder. So you are supporting Run just by being here tonight, and our sponsors are helping make that possible. I need to thank those two people right there, the lovely Pratts. Believe me, the people that work with me know that living with me is even harder than working with me. So I'm grateful that Wayne and Madison continue to choose me. Not that they really have a choice, but I'm grateful for them. And I want you all to know that right upstairs on the 3rd floor in the newly designed Conacher room, we're having an after party and you're all invited. So please feel free to pop upstairs, the conversation will continue. You can talk to your favorite cast member or the one you didn't like. And don't tell her that. But we are so excited for you to meet and hear from the second starting five. And I know we're like, ooh, the starting five. I was like, actually we have 2 dream teams tonight. It is Big Ten basketball time, so we're gonna talk about basketball just a little bit, go Boilers. So, anyway, hey, it's my show. We are so excited for you and grateful that you're still here. Please, please, please help me welcome back to the stage the cast of She Said, St. Louis.
Introducing the Civil War to my middle schoolers when a kid blurted out, "Are we gonna have World War III?" It's been a while, so you may not remember that in January of 2020, there were talks of North Korea starting a war, and this was before COVID was a real thing. Okay, so back to that moment. I took a deep breath and launched into something reassuring about, well, it was all gonna be okay, maybe? I'm sure a dictator was not going to start a war. Sure, because I know what the hell he's going to do. As the weeks went by, I was grateful that talks of World War III died down. Of course, we were in for another surprise that March. The teaching profession has always been about being nimble and making split-second decisions. We do our very best to prepare, but if anyone thinks that teaching is about reading off a lesson plan, then you've never worked in a school. Lesson plans are Lesson plans are guides for sure, but they're only half the story. In addition to whatever content we're slated to teach that day, there are current event questions, crisis in kids' families, full moons, holidays full of sugar, fruit in kids' heads, and a whole host of people who have very strong opinions, but what we should and should not be teaching. Not to mention the managing our own fears and emotions. We're expected to be teachers, social workers, counselors, personal tutors, executive functionings, coaches, PE breaks, nurses, and sometimes news reporters. I frankly have a newfound empathy for tightrope walkers. Back to COVID-19 and being back in person after teaching virtually. We had to practically yell behind our masks to make ourselves heard. We had to eat outside or in our car. We were terrified for ourselves, our kids' families, our families, and everybody who was vulnerable. They talk now about the learning gap that students have, which is very real. But what I've not seen written about is the collective trauma of both students and teachers who were terrified. We tried to put on a brave face for the kids with smizing. Ever heard of the word smize? For you who don't know, it's when you smile so much that your cheeks hurt so that the kids can see your smile above your mask line. We had to smize the tiny little heads in the internet space of Zoom and the kids sitting in our classroom. We couldn't give out hugs, we had to sanitize everything, and we had to have the kids sit in rows. It was clear that lots of us just wanted to get back to normal. We had to figure out that line, walk the tightrope between normalcy and safety, never knowing what was exactly right. I got into the teaching profession to help kids, to watch them grow, to see the light bulbs in their eyes, to see the pride when they overcome something hard, to inspire them to achieve their dreams. The very act of having this chance to reach out and touch a kid's life is an honor. I try to do that in the ways I know how, coming up with strong, engaging lessons and responding with help and compassion when they struggle. However, when it comes to navigating through heavy stuff, then I feel like I'm walking on that tightrope. Inhale, exhale, don't look down. Step it on that tightrope and hold steady. So many times. Trayvon Martin, Sandy Hook, Michael Brown, built that wall, Stockley verdict, Parkland shooting, COVID-19, January 6th riots, Ukraine, Uvalde, a school shooting in our own city, and Chinese spy balloons. Each time, teachers have this near impossible task of negotiating the 80+ kids that come to us with 80+ different perspectives, experiences, needs, and exposures to the topics we talk about. Some need comfort, some need the unicorn and rainbows version, and some crave processing the cold, hard truth. Each of those kids sit in my class looking to me to tell their version. So I'm left searching for words that feel so inadequate and so limited compared to what I want to say. I want my students to simultaneously be reassured that the world is not falling apart, and also know that we have some real stuff to work on. Where is the right balance? I have come to accept that I can't navigate this tightrope perfectly every time. I know that inevitably I will fall off, and when I do, I will be okay, and more importantly, my kids will be okay. I am lucky to have a safety net of supportive people and words of encouragement to catch me and help me get back on and teach another day. So if you know a teacher, make sure to help them realize that they are appreciated. And if they fall off the tightrope, that you will be there with words of appreciation or a hand to help them back up.
Opportunities, including the amazing opportunity to stand before you tonight. I'm an East St. Louis native. years, and currently I serve as an IT leader in the healthcare industry. Some moments, events, and situations are pivotal in everyone's life. My pivotal moment was at the age of 12 when I accepted an invitation from Coach Earl McDowell to attend basketball tryouts. I was a very shy and introverted tween, but Coach McDowell saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And little did I know that that decision would provide opportunities for me and equip me with skills that would sustain me for the rest of my life. I accepted many invitations to compete for positions on different athletic teams, but I am a member of several groups that I didn't try out for, such as being a fatherless daughter, being a rape and hostage survivor, being a child of poverty, and being a domestic violence survivor. Athletics, specifically basketball, taught me courage, gave me confidence. It taught me how to be mentally strong and resilient, built up my endurance and stamina, and gave me priceless skills in teamwork and leadership. Through the peaks and valleys of my life, I relied on my athletic skills and capabilities to pivot away from home or to pivot toward the next opportunity. So in case you don't know by now, I love basketball. I even wore my sweatpants today. I love the strategic thinking. I love the feeling of victory. I love performing under pressure, like I'm doing right now. And I love the determination it takes to be better with each competition. In athletics, endurance is an asset, but in a marriage plagued with addiction and regular occurrences of mental and emotional episodes, endurance is a liability. Through the years, I have mastered how to engage with my ex-husband or not, depending on his mood, the place, or other circumstances, all to keep the peace at home or when we return home. For 19 years, I absorbed the impact and shielded the rest of the household from the husband hurricanes, at least that's what I call them. Those hurricanes regularly hit our home. And in this situation, my endurance worked against me. Reoccurring thoughts had haunted me that if I left, he may not live long. I felt responsible for him living, and I felt unimaginable guilt at the thought that he would die if I left. I finally mustered up the courage and left the marriage. Not solely because of the hurricanes, but I loved him, wanted the best for him, wanted the best for us. But after 19 years, I'm telling you, I was exhausted. So I decided the best thing to do was to save myself and the rest of the family. So I pivoted and began to plan for the future. Some may already know this, but I intentionally segregated my personal and professional life. I intentionally segregated my personal and professional life before the divorce, but after the divorce, I blended the two versions of myself and reclaim my winning attitude and mindset that I was packing my personal long before I became a missus. I'm gonna step back just a few decades because the divorce was not my first setback. After playing for the University of Houston, I tried it out and made the National Women's Basketball Association team in Austin, Texas. However, the league folded due to lack of sponsorship. From Austin, I signed a contract with a professional team in Switzerland. And I signed a contract with a professional team in Switzerland. But I broke my knee. I broke my knee during a game in Geneva, Switzerland. I had surgery, I rehabbed it, and the next season I signed with a team in Spain.
All right, Sid.
That injury really affected my ability to perform at the professional level. So after my gig in Spain, I accepted that my playing days were over, and I started to think about how I would pivot from being a basketball player. Because according to my plans, when I left Austin, Texas, I was going to be playing basketball, professional basketball, to the ripe old age of about 40. See, back then, 40 was so far away. It was so far away. Fortunately, the principles and the skill that I learned in basketball transcend athletics. A position in healthcare was one of my first opportunities post-basketball. I had worked in healthcare approximately 5 years before I was promoted to a leadership position. East St. Louis was a breeding ground for producing high-performing athletes, regardless of the sport. My high school coaches, Coach Riggins, Coach Benoit, Coach McDonald, Coach Ennis, and a host of mentors taught us all the athletes about leadership, in and out of competition. I learned what it meant to be a leader. I understood team dynamics. I understood how to prepare properly and then how to execute. I learned about sportsmanship. And when you think about it, that's what I learned through the lens of athletics. Those were the same skills that were needed to be successful in the corporate arena. As a dedicated athlete, you practice, you sharpen, you reflect, you essentially evaluate your skills every day because you must be better than the last competition. There is no time for dwelling on past performances, win, lose, or draw. Get ready and be better tomorrow. Working to be better every day is precisely how I lead at the corporate level and how I've led for the past 26 years. Despite how tattered and torn my personal life was, professionally, success showed up for me with every role, assignment, and opportunity. To Karen, Jean, and Charlene, I thank you immensely for your professional leadership, mentoring, compassion, and grace. You allowed me a space to beat my need to be competitive and productive. You created a sense of belonging. You allowed me to earn an honest living while I rebuilt my life through and after the hurricanes. A basketball and my mother's determination allowed me to dream of life beyond the blocks of East St. Louis. Because of basketball, I've had the privilege to live, work, and travel around the United States, Switzerland, Spain, and Germany. Because of basketball, serving as an IT leader, and contributing to healthcare transformations in communities, across communities in the Midwest, Southern, and the Eastern states is a blessing to me, and it's a blessing for me. Today what I believe to be true about life is you can change your life at any age. I've done it and I continue to do it. Reflection helps you learn from your mistakes and your challenges. Daily reflection is my to-do list. It's not on my to-do list, it's what I do every day. Living with purpose is paramount. Being a resource for others. It's good sportsmanship. There have been so many people that have been a resource for me. Having mentors, coaches, and a personal network of angels working with you and for you is invaluable. That's great teamwork. Thanks so much to my family, my friends, and my network of angels. The traumatic events that happen throughout my life are just that. They're individual events. They are not who I am. I have no emotional debt, and I have no regret for the life that I've lived this far. Thank you.
She always struggled to get up. I was always trying to find a way to motivate her. I told her we would only get her treats for the class in the morning if she was on time. Of course, the next morning she didn't get up, and we drove past the store and straight to school. She cried because she had promised her class that she would bring poochkies, the traditional Mardi Gras treat. During the day, of course, I felt so guilty for not having taken her, and I pictured her sad little face explaining to her little friends that she didn't have the treats because her mom was so mean. But when I went to pick her up after school, Marcella walked out of the building with a huge box of treats in her hand. She was so proud of herself. When she got in the car, I asked her, what happened? Where did you get them? She said, well, you didn't get them, so I just called my aunt. Another time, she ran away. I don't even remember why. But she picked her stuffed animals and little rain boots and put them in her little suitcase, and she marched up the hill to the neighbor's house. It only lasted for a couple of hours because she was hungry and the neighbors didn't have her favorite food, beans and tortillas. She always asked for what she wanted, and she knew how to do that. She always found a way. Whether it was to get good grades, go to grandma's house even though grandma lived 10 hours away, or go to that Lollapalooza concert that was several states away. Go to law school. And I so admire her tenacity, I often wish I had that gutsiness. She lived life and lived it fully. She would send us videos of her dancing and twerking and singing for her birthday, for our birthdays, or even a middle of the night hello. Marcella was so proud of her cousins, and she took her role as one of the oldest cousins so seriously. She cheered on her friends and family in everything that we did. She was passionate about the unhoused and underserved, And when she got accepted to Wayne State Law, she was so excited about the opportunity to join the Black Law Student Association, to mentor other students, and intern at Legal Services of Eastern Michigan. She found her voice and a certain confidence that I am just now finding. What hurts me most is that she struggled profoundly more with many of the things that we all struggle with. A tough day, a conflict in a relationship, feelings of self-doubt. Have you felt that pressure? The feeling of the weight of the world on your shoulders? Not being able to get past your pain and sadness? I have felt that too. The fear, the unknown, the weight of the world, and life being too hard for me. It seemed to hit her so much harder though. Maybe because living life to its fullest was so important to her. She just didn't know how to manage, how to come to terms with what she was feeling. Her life tragically ended when she overdosed in September 2021. But I have to go back a little bit. It was just over a year before Marcella's death that we received a similar call. My son had had an asthma attack that caught us by surprise. He hadn't had asthma since he was little. And then in July 2020, at 26 years old, just like that, he was gone. During that time, every decision hurt. But one of the hardest things for me was figuring out what my son was going to wear for such an occasion, his funeral. I had once loved shopping, but this trip to the store went against my every idea of joy or celebration. His death just didn't make sense, and finding the strength to be strong for the girls, for myself, was hard and scary, and so much work. I have been questioning life since. Why am I here? What should I have done differently? How am I supposed to live without them? There had to be a reason beyond the fear and the grief. And although I had seen death before, meeting death the way that I did, my son had died, and now my baby was gone. It had never been revealed in my life that intimately. Once death shows up in your life, it's hard to forget it. You know every contour, every dark stare, every expression of the pain and ugliness that it can present. You can have an idea about life, that if you mean well, you're not hurting anybody, you're a good person. And then suddenly, that's not enough. Here was death knocking at my door again just over a year later. This time a dog, that's what we called her, bringing with it fear and sadness and regret. But a life of sadness is not who either of them were, and it was not who I was this time either. So I chose to say goodbye with purpose, joy, laughter, along with the pain, the weight of the world, and the heartache. This time, when we said goodbye to Marcella, we celebrated. We celebrate their life and continue to honor their smile and drive to change the world every day. It took something to come to that. I liken it to my training leading up to running the Chicago Marathon, because yes, I ran a marathon. I've done Dancing with the Stars, written 2 international bestsellers, and a few other things on my bucket list that make no sense to anyone except me. I did it because those things help me keep going, to keep trying, to keep living and come to terms with what I'm feeling. It was exactly 1 month after Doll passed away that I was supposed to run the Chicago Marathon. The running and the training helped me to function, to overcome, and to stay sane. At first, it felt too much to bear, and the pain in my heart was suffocating. Getting out there every day was tiring and painful, the pain and the blisters. But here's what I found out. Blisters eventually became calluses. And by nature, those calluses became padding, if you will, that provided the much needed cushion that will inevitably protect, or that inevitably protected me, and that will protect you as you run the distance and cross your finish line. I do think about what I could have told or shared with my daughter to get her past the callousy part, the blistery part in life, to see what is on the other side, where it doesn't hurt, or at least not as much. And if it does, you're more resilient to press on from it. What Marcella taught me, and what I'm finding out, is that I get to choose, and you get to decide. To put some old skin on, protect yourself, and keep trying in order to discover what is just past the pain in the marathon of your life. When I was training for the marathon, some people thought I was crying because I was running. Some people assumed I was going to quit. Maybe I even thought about it. But running helped keep me going. I continued to face my fears, fault finding and feelings. I blamed, I got mad at the world. I kept running and I kept crying. With every step, I got to decide. I got to celebrate Marcella's life just as she would have lived it, by helping others, cheering them on, and using my life experiences, my passion, to make a difference for others. This is the life I've been given. Hers, entwined with mine, entwined with my son, with our community, and connected with yours today. So today, choose how you will keep forging forward, and more importantly, what works for you. We are but one breath away from life. Each breath we get to take. Thank you.
Date of birth, the younger one asked. May 10th, 1977. I barely said it out loud. His chubby partner pressed my finger into the ink pad. Occupation, he asked, really meaning this ought to be good. I looked at him as he handcuffed me to the railing. Greeting card designer. Greeting cards, he said, his Saudi accent on full display. Yeah, telling me stories. I'll spare you the tedious detail of the warning that was filed as a ticket, my tendency to not open the mail, the missed court date of the warrant, and my embarrassing arrest in my swimming suit. But led to my getting the Middlesex County Cambridge jail. Because this isn't a story about that. I will also spare you the detail of my deep privilege that allowed me to eventually post my own bail from an ATM in handcuffs. Represent myself in court, where the judge asked me where my client was because she assumed that I was the lawyer. And have it all wrapped up off my record, provided that the fees were paid. Thanks, honey. Have a nice day. Because this isn't really a story about that either. Will not, however, spare you the detail of me taking requests for Broadway hits in the cell block in the middle of the night because the toilet was
disgusting?
The acoustics in there were because this is a story about how we connect to ourselves and to each other. And like the young officer so poetically observed, I am a storyteller. Hi. My name is Leigh Standley.
Hi, Leigh.
And I am, among other things, a greeting card writer and designer. I have translated life experiences, our heartbreaks, our joys, our struggles, our celebrations, our losses. I help translate all the tenderest, saddest, funniest moments of our lives into poetic, meaningful verse that have an ideal length of 2 to 3 sentences, give or take. It's always been a gift of mine. I was a bright, quirky child with verbal gifts and what we like to now call leadership skills. I could always read how people felt. I could see their energy, and except for a brief obsession with wanting to be a Bob Evans waitress because of big, really cute outfits, I have always wanted to be an artist. I have a knack for pulling words from feelings and shaping them into stories. Stories about us. Because I believe that more often than not, it's the stories that we have in common. I believe that's what connects us. And I've made a living in service of that connection. But stories can also disconnect us, especially when they're stories told by us to us. Stories that come from experience, lack of experience, comments people have made, our own observations about ourselves and our surroundings, the ways in which we feel like square pegs in the round holes of life. Stories can become beliefs. I have made an anecdote of my night in jail now 20 years in the rear view, but full disclosure, it took me a really long time to even talk about that. I didn't tell my mom for like 3 years. I felt ashamed and embarrassed, of course. But in reflection, what was worse is that it was seemingly proof true of a lifelong story that I had about myself. I told you you are not responsible. You never paid attention to details. You are so disorganized. If you could just follow through on one thing, I don't know how you think you're going to make it in the real world. The stories have voices, of course. Because even though I had been a college athlete, moved alone to a city where I knew no one, made a life for myself, made friends, held great jobs, had not so much gotten a speeding ticket until this day, my understanding of my abilities and my self-worth was hobbled by these stories that I had about myself. And this event was confirmation that they were all true. In fact, these stories were the reason that I almost never started my company in the first place. As a kid, I was an okay student. I was in the gifted program, but summer school for math, which I struggled with. I was a slow reader, and I didn't do great on tests, but I understood complex concepts, and I loved learning. By high school, I found a groove. I manipulated my schedule to avoid math, and surrounded myself with high achievers. I worked really, really hard to graduate as scholarship material. I headed off to art school and the world of visual communication. After college, I would move to Boston and work as an art director and creative director in advertising and marketing until post 9/11 layoffs found me working the desk at a popular downtown yoga studio. I needed a break from the heartache of getting laid off over and over again, and frankly, working in a hot yoga studio in the early aughts was just the distraction that I needed. I did know that someday I would go back to work in a creative field, and to do that, to stay hireable, I needed to be producing something. So I started making small art and writing pieces based on stories that I had heard people tell or experiences in the yoga studio. I would make them into postcards and send them to friends. Before long, the yoga studio became like a home away from home. And the artwork that I was doing became a very lucrative side business after we framed some of them and hung them in the bathroom. You should really start a business doing this, people would say. Oh, I could never run a business. I'm bad at math.
One day, a girl in the yoga studio said, I'm good at that stuff, let's be partners. And so with my art, enthusiasm, and about half of her bat mitzvah money, Curly Girl Design was born. Almost exactly 21 years ago today. It didn't take more than one unglamorous year of not making millions of dollars and working out of the gross attic of my apartment for my first and only business partner to quit. The day she quit, she took half of our assets with her, the laptop computer and our business software, and left me standing in a sweltering attic with the other half, about 1,500 greeting cards. I told you you wouldn't be able to do it. The story said, there is no way you're put together enough to run this company by yourself. It continued. And so I sat on the floor and cried. Later that day, my husband, who was then my boyfriend, that I met at the yoga studio, came home and heard what happened. He listened empathetically, poured me a glass of wine, and suggested that I take 24 solid hours to cry about it. But then you either need to get a job or run this business by yourself, he said. He had not heard the stories. And we were broke. I needed to be working, not crying. So I kept working the business. I took it one thing at a time. I asked for help when I needed it, and slowly began to be able to hire people who were better at the stuff that I wasn't good at. One decision at a time, lots of learning later. I grew the company over 2 decades to, at its peak, a staff of 12 people doing $2 million in sales and distributing to all 50 states, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. I have won 5 Louis Awards, which, in case you haven't heard, are the Oscars of the greeting card industry. In 2021, I was awarded the Writer of the Year Award by the Greeting Card Association for my body of work. I made my mark by making cards for people, not occasions. By celebrating the small moments and making our stories relatable. By helping people find the words that they're looking for, I also found a way to rewrite some stories I had about myself. Don't worry, there are always more stories. And things that challenge us tend to make them quite loud. Like, I don't know, speaking on stage in front of a group of people. Over these past several months, while preparing for this event, I was struggling to meet the deadlines surrounding it. I typically push up against a deadline, but I was like dry humping these. It was inappropriate. And there they were. What do you think you're doing? Who do you think you are? You're too slutty a person to do this kind of thing. Even now, I almost let them win. Almost came up with a reason that I couldn't be here tonight. I have an email saved in drafts. But then I remembered what the good officer knew that night in the Cambridge jail. I am a storyteller. I'm a teller of stories. And I have tools. I have compassion. I have understanding of myself. Leadership skills. And a fucking pen. Because here's the thing. Sometimes the stories are true. Sometimes they just feel true. But the stories that we have about ourselves are allowed to change. Because they are ours, we can rewrite them as many times
as we want. So I recommend eating that. First gay person I really knew. I watched her come out to friends, family, and all of our sorority sisters. I watched her date, meet the love of her life, stood by her side while they got married, and have been their biggest fan ever since.
Yes.
Simultaneously, telling myself, there's no way I can be that vulnerable. There's no way I can let other people know I'm gay. As a teenager and young adult, I constantly compared myself to my friends, wondering why relationships were working out for them, but not for me. After I graduated from college, got settled into a job and apartment, I joined a dating app. I watched my friends go on all of these great dates and form relationships so easily. Meanwhile, I went on date after date after date after date with men that were wonderful, but just not right for me. I would find these frivolous details about them that I didn't like and declare that's why we didn't work out. I dreaded talking to my parents and my friends about it because I felt like I was letting them down when yet another one didn't work out. In my head, I knew there was more. I've known I like women for most of my life. It's a part of me that I buried deep down for years, so deep that I lost count of how many straight dates I went on. I was fearful that I would be made fun of, not accepted, not trusted, and no longer loved. Fearful of people knowing the real me. What would people think of me? Would anyone still want to be friends with me? Would my friends who were girls think I'm into them? Would my parents still love me? How would I tell them? How would I explain this to my brother who has autism? The first time I came out was to my best friend, Allie. We had taken a trip to Kansas City to see one of our favorite podcasts perform live. I had been building up the courage for months to tell her. The number of times I heard her saying, Allie, I have something to tell you, was countless. I knew it was time. I knew I needed to rip the Band-Aid off. I finally felt brave enough, after several drinks, to tell her that I was bisexual. Many tears later, and I went to sleep that night feeling relieved that finally someone knew I wasn't sitting alone with this huge secret anymore. The love and acceptance I felt from Allie was what I needed to start dating women. Fast forward to summertime of 2020, when the world had been stuck inside their homes for about 4 months, I was faced with the realization that our lives are short and precious, and if I didn't live it being 100% me, then what's the point? The internal reckoning I went through to decide to really be myself was rough. I know we were all crying in 2020, but I added to this I was terrified how my life would look if I kept pretending. I was also terrified how it would look as an openly queer person. But I'd had enough of hiding. That's when I knew it was time to come out to my family. I struggled for months on how to tell them. Do I stop them in the middle of dinner and say, by the way, I'm gay? Do I pause the loosegate and say, I like women? Nothing felt right or natural until one night we were having a conversation as I was leaving their house, and I just blurted it out. There was immediate shock on their face, obviously, followed by deep, unconditional love.
Yeah.
questions like, why didn't you say anything before? Were you afraid to tell us? I explained that I finally got to a place where I was feeling comfortable saying it out loud and wasn't ashamed anymore. My parents hugged me and told me how much they loved me and would support me in this. I stood strong that entire conversation and then sobbed as soon as I got in the car. And if anyone knows me, they know it's a miracle that I didn't start crying from the moment I opened my mouth. This is something I had been building up to my entire life. And it was finally out there. The relief I felt, the pressure that was on my shoulders, it's like nothing I ever experienced. After that, my life felt like it truly started. I started seriously dating women, shared this news with even more friends, and began figuring out what it meant to identify as a lesbian. I went through a breakup with my first girlfriend, explored my style, consumed media of people who were like me, and then finally attended my first ever Pride. That is where I saw the woman I had just ghosted weeks before. Listen, at that point in time, I'd been on dating apps for 6 years. I was exhausted. I needed a breather just for a moment. But then I saw her and realized what a huge mistake I had made. I messaged her later that night and played coy and said, "Did I see you at Pride?" Acting like we didn't make extended eye contact. We went on our first date the following week, and now I get to marry Tiffany this fall. With Tiffany, it all feels right. I found the person who loves me to my core. I found the person who makes me laugh like no one else can. I found the person whom I want to spend the rest of my life with. Coming out and coming into myself was the best gift I could have given myself. I was so deeply afraid of being me and yet had no idea of the life that was waiting out there for me to embrace. I'm incredibly lucky to be surrounded by family and friends who have supported me since I told them my big secret. But not everyone gets this lucky. This is not how these stories usually go. You might have thought I would come up here and tell you how I got kicked out or cut off. I often reflect on how easy my coming out journey was and how I could only hope the generations to come have it even easier. Thank you.